Greenman, and this is my final project for our formative assessment class. For this activity, I'm going to be looking at the tech tool Formative. This particular program is like an online quiz. The teacher can ask a variety of different questions, and it congregates the student data in real time, which is one of the things that I love most. The special features for this quiz is that it can align to a particular standard, which is really good for somebody in a standards-based classroom. I myself am an ELA teacher, so this is highly important for me. There are 3 question types that you can ask: multiple choice, true or false, and short answer. For this reason, the question variety is not as robust as some of the other tools that we looked at, but it does cover the basics. So with the multiple choice and the true or false, we get some of those quantitative measures, and for the short answer, we can have an open-ended response for more sophisticated question types. They also have an exit ticket feature, which is already pre-formulated, so it's really easy to click on, and the first 2 questions are always consistent. The third question says it's a short answer question, and it responds to something that the teacher poses to the class in that moment. There are also quick questions, which in the picture on the right-hand side, you can see you can ask just one really quick question that you come up with in that moment. This allows for a lot of flexibility with your teaching. A lot of times with formative assessment, we can plan out in advance what we want to ask, but sometimes with formative assessment, it needs to be in the moment we realize there's a need. Those quick questions allow for that flexibility. Integrating this particular program into the classroom, it's pretty simple, but there are a few key components that you need to keep in mind. So first of all, in considering the options for use, I see this as being a tool that can be used in a whole bunch of scenarios. So just sort of generally speaking, this is great for pre-assessment. If there's a particular skill you're focusing in on and you want to see how your students are doing, this is a really easy way to get some quantitative data on that. A check for understanding during instruction. So I know when I'm giving a lecture, I like to stop periodically and make sure that I'm seeing whether or not every student is getting what I'm saying. If not, I can revise in the moment or provide more examples as necessary. This can also be a post-assessment, so after instruction to sort of see where students are at. And then finally, as an exit ticket, whether you're using that exit ticket feature or something you've created in advance, that can be really helpful as a way to just sort of wrap up the class and allow for student reflection on the lesson. I have used this program in the past with my students just a couple of times, and I'd love to incorporate it more. But some of the takeaways that I got from students' reactions were that they like that they can move at their own pace. Kahoot can be overwhelming for some kids that are a little bit slower and want to take their time. They like that the feedback is immediate so that they can immediately know and understand how they did. And then finally, I saw a lot of kids had a desire to talk about the questions that they got wrong. And so that works in really nicely with our idea of helping kids understand what strategies they can use in the future to meet their goals. In terms of effective formative assessment, those 3 main questions that we're looking at, all of these can be answered and approached very easily with Formative. And I wanted to show here how it can work in a variety of different content areas and grade levels. So in terms of the where am I going scenario, this question helps students pinpoint exactly what they are expected to know. So if you imagine a 4th grade social studies example, where perhaps they're learning about American history, the questions that you are asking are very clearly showing them what they are expected to know. Where am I now? If you imagine perhaps a high school level math class, this immediate feedback lets the students compare where they're at, their competency level, to what the expectation is. So if they're taking this quick formative assessment, let's say it's 5 questions, and they got 3 of the 5 questions correct and they got 2 of them wrong, then they know that they still have some areas to grow, and they know specifically what types of questions they need to grow with. And then finally, what strategies can help me get to where I need to go? In my 7th grade ELA class, a lot of what doing a Socrative assessment leads to is having class-wide discussions about how people achieved the correct answer. I use Socrative, for example, with grammar questions, and grammar questions can be really tricky, particularly when we're looking at PSSA style examples, and kids really need help in identifying the tricky parts of the question that helped other students get to the correct answer. The data here. I've got 2 pages where I talk about the data, and there are 2 different aspects I'd like to approach. The first is when you launch the quiz. If you look at the picture on the right-hand side, you'll see that there are a whole variety of settings that you can choose that provide the students with different levels of involvement. So the instant feedback lets the kids know immediately how they're doing. Open navigation allows them to move at their own pace versus the teacher pace, which I think the students like a little bit less. And then if you look over on the far right-hand side, requiring names, if you choose not to require the names, then it's simply providing anonymous feedback for the student. And you can also show the students their final score, which helps them get a more overarching view of how they're doing. And then finally, you can allow them 1 attempt, or you can allow them multiple attempts, which provides them the option to grow and show growth and apply whatever strategies you're talking about as a class immediately to retake the quiz. In terms of the data that you'll get back, so this is a screenshot of one of the results screens that I had for students who had taken the quiz. As you can see in the top left-hand corner, I can choose to show the names and show the answers. This is really valuable for the students. I will post this screen, I will project it on my whiteboard so that students can see kind of how everybody's doing. The names I always cross off so they never know who they are. And if students are still responding, some students are still taking the quiz, I will make sure they can't see the correct answer. When you tab over that they can show the answer, then on, let's say, the first question, number 1, it would show the different options, A, B, C, or D, and it would have them in green or red so they can see what the correct answer is. So obviously you don't want to show that while students are still taking the quiz, or they will see what the correct answer is. But this sort of allows you to see the students as an individual. So that first student listed there got 100% of the questions right, but the 4th one down only got 80% correct. It also allows you to see the congregate data. So if you look all the way down at the very bottom where it says class totals, for question number 1, 100% of the students got that question correct. But for number 2, only 47% got that question correct. So this can allow me to do several things. 1, I can identify the students who have reached mastery. I can identify the students who need a lot of help. I'm looking at those students who only got 60% correct. I would definitely want to intervene there. It also allows me to catch faulty questions. So maybe if I look back, just by clicking on the number 2, it'll pull up the question again, and we can look at how that question is phrased. Perhaps the question itself is faulty. If it's not faulty and it's good, then there's a problem if less than half of the students are getting it correct. That shows me that perhaps it's an area for future whole class instruction. And for those students who maybe were only getting 60% correct, maybe it shows me a place where I can start differentiating for some of those students who need a bit more support. And for those students with 100%, it shows me how I can differentiate to perhaps move them on to the next skill or to dig deeper into this one. This also does something really interesting in terms of the data, because students can see their proficiency. How proficient are they? They got 80%. Okay, that's pretty good. It also allows them to compare themselves to their classmates. And that's a personal choice that you as the teacher need to make based on the situation and what's best for your students. Sometimes it's good for them to see where they compare to the rest of the class. Sometimes that can establish a not so nice classroom environment. So it's something to consider in terms of the data. In classroom management, this helps a lot with classroom management because it provides variety. When students are being assessed all of the time, it can become very bland and boring. This is just a different way to do it that allows for variety and keeps the kids interested. There's a lot of student engagement here because they're getting that immediate feedback and because they are so intrigued by what they got wrong and they want to know why they got it wrong. And then finally, it helps adjust the environment of the classroom because the students are stakeholders here. They get a say. They get to have conversations in what's going on. They get to see their growth. They get to see what they're getting wrong. They get to understand better why they're getting those things wrong or perhaps share why they're getting them right. And then finally, this helps establish a growth mindset, particularly when you click on that one setting that allows students to retake the quiz. They can immediately apply what they're learning to show that they're getting better. And that establishes, obviously, a clear path for success for students. In terms of applying rules to this particular type of assessment before students take it, I would say treat this like a quiz. So separate your students, have them work independently, don't look at each other's screens, things like that, so that you're getting a true reflection of what they actually know. And I would also say you need to consider whether or not they can use reference materials. In my particular classroom, in an ELA classroom, because I'm so focused in on the skills they're learning as opposed to just content knowledge, I would really recommend that, I give them definitions. So when I ask them, what's the dangling modifier in this sentence, they're not answering incorrectly because they don't remember what a dangling modifier is. So I would give them the reference materials so that they know what a dangling modifier is, and they simply have to identify it because that's the level I'm looking at. So definitely something to consider there when using this particular tool in the classroom. Finally, in terms of technology integration, looking again at the SAM-R model, I believe that this tool probably fits best under augmentation. The essential, the core of what it is doing, asking those multiple choice, true or false, or short answer questions, that can happen with paper and pen. So that can happen without the technology. It augments, however, because of what it does with the data, because it allows us to see the data more clearly, the individuals and the whole class, as well as the students getting that immediate feedback, definitely augments the process. And then in TPAC, obviously, it all depends on how you incorporate and how you implement this particular technology into the classroom. So it is technology. By doing this, students are practicing and learning those 21st century skills. The pedagogy here really, I believe, falls into how you are using it in the classroom. The content is what questions you are asking and making sure that you're asking appropriate questions. So that's an easy one. The pedagogy, however, deals with what you're doing before, during, and after using this tool. My biggest suggestion for Socrative would be after you have used the tool, you really need to stop and allow for time for reflection. So students are getting that feedback. Now, what do they do with it? So allowing for discussion to take place so that students are understanding their peers' strategies to get to the correct answer, as well as kind of understanding perhaps what mistakes they made. I think that's really how you can use this tool in the best way possible. And again, if you're interested in using this tool, the website is very simple and it's posted right there for you. Thanks so much.